powered by Riverside FM.
Why don't older people commit more crime? This was a question that occurred to me when I was watching the news recently and heard about the sentencing of a criminal where the sentence was given in a number of years that they would have to spend in jail. For example, 20-year sentence. It struck me that for someone closer to the end of their life, an older person, being sentenced for 20 years or any other length of time might not mean so much. It might not be such a burdensome penalty if they only had a few more years to live. Which made me wonder, why don't we see more older people committing crime? But is that true? Do we not see that? Looking at the UK crime statistics, we do in fact find that younger offenders are by far the most responsible for crimes. In fact, peak offending rates occur between 15 years of age and 24 years of age. And following 24 years of age, there's a consistent decline in the propensity to offend. That holds across pretty much all types of crime. As for older people, well, people who are aged 60 years and older, they account for only 1 to 2% of all crimes. And the types of offence that they cause are mostly fraud, driving offences, and some sexual offences, although those tend to be prosecutions for historic offences. So returning to my original thought, what might be behind this seeming lack of offending amongst the elders? I went to a line of thinking put forward by Gary Becker, an economist who was an advocate of the Chicago School way of thinking. He proposed that we model human behaviour. By model, we mean set up a number of factors which will influence human behaviour. We recognise that these models are simplistic and they're likely wrong, but they're useful for thinking about the factors that might affect people's decisions. So, for example, when it comes to the propensity to commit crime, he considered there were 3 things to assess. Firstly, what's the reward from the crime, i.e. what is the benefit? In the case of theft, that might be the value of the item that was to be stolen. And you would weigh up the reward against 2 things, the risk of being caught and the penalty if you were caught. The risk of being caught is obviously subjective, but in some cases it's clearly higher. For example, it might be 100% if you were thinking of committing a crime in front of a police officer. The penalty is perhaps easiest to consider when you think about fines. Consider penalty fares for riding trains without a ticket. But in the context that first raised this thought with me, I was thinking about the penalty in the duration of jail time. So, putting my first question into that framework, for the same crime with the same reward, isn't the penalty lesser for an older person? In some sense, they have less to lose, and shouldn't we expect them to commit more crime? Well, I think that you can have some easy ripostes to this. Firstly, is it true that they actually have less to lose? They may well have built a reputation, have significant family ties, they may have significant wealth that they don't want to lose, and that might be in contrast to younger individuals who feel that they genuinely don't have so much to lose. There are a number of other factors, perhaps the most significant being whether this framework is really applicable. Crimes can often be impulsive. They are done without any consideration to the consequences at all. If that's the case, then is it not true that older people have greater maturity and greater impulse control? They may therefore be able to restrict themselves from certain types of crime. Older people may have less physical or mental ability to commit the crimes. They also may be less susceptible and less exposed to any forms of peer pressure, for example, and gang culture. So overall, whilst it's true that the risk of being caught and the consequence of being caught must play a factor, I think, on balance, that people don't often behave like this. In fact, they're more likely to weigh up the moral decision in their behaviour and the maturity that they have gained through life. In any case, given the current statistics that we see on age of offenders, you can rest assured the next time you see an older person, you're probably safe, unless they're going to defraud you.